Welcome to Press Start, How to Become a Game Developers. I'm Adam Ardisasmita, CEO of Indonesia and Vice President of Indonesia Game Association will be your host for this episode. In this podcast, we will talk about game development and how to start your career in as a game developers. We will invite experts from the game industry to tell us their game development journey to inspire us. I hope this podcast can help you to start to be a game developers. And don't forget to stay tuned because Press Start will have a new episodes every week on Thursday. And don't forget that this podcast is brought to you by Indonesia Game Association and the Goethe-Institut Jakarta. So today are having a special guest from Germany. I think I met with him the first time in 2017 when I visited Safladen. We have Lorenzo Pilia. How are you?
Hello, hello. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming into this podcast. It's really nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And by the way, right now, in which city are you in?
I'm in Berlin, Germany.
All right, you're in Berlin. And how's the situation regarding pandemic over there?
I would say compared to many other parts of the world, I think it's going relatively well.
Mm.
So good amount of people got vaccinated. I mean, I would say that pretty much everyone who wanted to get the vaccine by now got vaccinated.
Wow.
And yeah, I think at this stage now, we're recording at the end of August, and I would say things are fairly normal with the restrictions, but
Oh.
yeah. So I think yeah, definitely. I think we're in the category where we can't complain. So
So everybody already go back to the normal activity, like going to work, go to the park, something like that.
oh, the park, I would say going outdoors, going to parks, eating outside. It's allowed. It's fairly normal.
Mm.
Regarding indoors, there are some restrictions. People need to wear a mask indoors, and yeah. But overall, yes, I think the mask is the only requirement, and yeah.
I see. That's nice. That's nice. All right. Before we started our discussion, maybe could you please give us some quick introduction regarding yourself, like where are you working now and what's your role in the game industry? Go ahead.
Yeah, so currently my main role is that of executive producer for the indie game studio Maschinen-Mensch. We've been working now for some time on a game called Curious Expedition 2, which is a roguelike expedition simulation set in the late 19th century, and it's the game. It's out already on Steam, and it was released very recently on Switch, and it will be out on PlayStation and Xbox pretty soon.
Ooh.
And yeah, and we're working currently, even though the game is out, the version 1.0, we're working on some future content updates. And that's my I would say that's my currently my main activity, and alongside this I also work as outreach manager for Codex, which is a project management tool aimed specifically at game developers. And yeah, these are my, I would say, for the past couple of years, these have been my main this is what have been keeping me mostly busy in the past, and before pandemic I was also active as a event organizer. I did for a few years between 2014 and 2019. I worked as program manager for Amaze, an independent game festival here in Berlin, which is quite known with in different parts of the world, and that's also, I know also you visited in 2017. You were part of it, and alongside this, I also organizing together with a few other people. I organize every couple of months a meetup for the local game dev community called Talk and Play. We did 40 editions of this event every 2 months on the course of 7 years. Now it's on a break because of the pandemic. But yeah, we're kind of planning to resume hopefully at some point in the future. And yeah, the last editions we did of this event were quite successful. It's a free event, but it was attracting 200 people at each edition. So yeah, it's an event where people could meet, network, exchange ideas, show their projects, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're gonna dig deeper with that role in the later on, like your role as a producer, your role as the outreach, and then all the events that you manage. But before we start the question, we usually give all of our guests on press start some trivial question. So you don't need to worry. There is no right or wrong, and there's no score or leaderboard. It's only some simple question, but you can answer with everything pop up in your head right away. Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. What is the first question? What is the last game that you played? Hmm.
Oh, so I'm waiting too long. Oh, to have a bad memory for this stuff. I would say actually Death Trash. Actually, the last play, the
Death
game,
Rest. I
Death
see.
Trash.
It recently released, like right?
It was very recently released, and it's made by a member of our co-working space and indie game collective, Zaftladen, where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
This is not my flat. This is not my sofa. It's some of the sofas we have in the office. So yeah, the Stretch was released 2 3 weeks ago in early access, and since yeah, it's Stefan, the developer, is our friend. I bought it immediately on Steam just to leave a review. I only got to play a bit like through the first part, but yes, Death Trash.
Yes, that is awesome. I saw the review from the media and the performance on Steam is very, very good. I hope the games will be very successful.
Yeah, so far
Okay.
I think it's been doing well so far. Yeah.
Yes, yes. All right. So for the second question, what is the longest hour for a game that you ever played? The game that you play the most, that you keep playing, or you spend a lot of time for playing that games?
Ooh, I would say now on top of my head. I mean, I would need to check. I mean, on Steam, I would have the data. I would say from time to time I get hooked on some mobile game, and then it just tends to be the game I go back to
Mhm,
just because there are games I go back to just because they're available on my phone.
mhm.
I can. Does it count the games I've worked on?
Of course, that counts. That's a game.
Then probably I would say between like playing myself and the testing the consoles, I would say yeah, Curious Expedition 2 definitely
Okay.
in recent times. But that's a bit cheating. I guess it's not the question you like to hear. I need to let me go back to that maybe later. I'll think about it, and if I need to maybe I can open Steam in the background and check a bit my history.
Don't
But
worry.
to be
Don't worry.
honest, there are games from time to time where I get hooked on
Mhm,
and play a lot. But generally speaking, I'm more the type of person I would rather like play more games for like more games, but for a shorter
mm,
time than spend hundreds of hours
I
on a game.
see.
Yeah,
Do you have
I would
any
say.
particular genre of the game that you like the most? Like maybe some RPGs or some narrative games?
Yeah, I would say I tended more to lead towards the be interested in like narrative games, so
Mm.
shorter, like 1 2 3 hours long.
Ah.
I like to experience. I tend to like to experience games in a way more similar to how you experience like books or movies. You
Mm.
know, I like start and an end. And I think also as I get older, yeah, I tend to prefer those type of experiences rather than continuous ones where I put hundreds of hours in. So yeah.
I see, I see. That's interesting, right? All right, all right. Okay, for the next question, what is the most memorable game event that you ever attended or organized?
Oh well, I won't talk about the ones I organized or been involved in. I mean, I have a lot of good memories
Mm,
regarding the events I've been involved. Of course,
mm,
Amaze. There's been a lot of good editions. I would say the last one where I was involved, and the last one that took place physically before the pandemic was in 2019
mm.
here in Berlin. Took place in a former sports center. sport, basically kind of like not a gym, but it's a place where you can play different type of sports.
Uh-huh.
And is that kind of in the eastern part of Berlin? It was kind of semi, I wouldn't say abandoned, but really not longer in use. And we kind of occupied the entire building, and it was quite. I have some good memories about that event. Maybe also because again, it
Oh.
was one of the last big events I went to, and. And then I would say maybe once I haven't organized myself. I was rethinking recently about Playful Arts Festival, an event was organized in the Netherlands for a few years by my friend Zuraida Butter, and she's currently actually she did the program curator for Amaze. So
Ah.
she kind of like after I left Amaze, she kind of took she's basically filling the role I used to do. And this event, like Playful Arts Festival, used to take place in the beginning of the summer in the Netherlands, and in an event which took place all over a city in the Netherlands. So it was like a lot of activities, open air. It was somehow
Mm.
between performance, theater, games. There was a bit of digital games, but a lot of like physical games in the city. It was interacting with buildings and with people, and it was very inspiring. I mean, I really
Wow.
enjoy walking around, discovering cities, and doing this in a playful way. It was quite unique. I would say it's unlike any other event I've been to. So yeah, and I have really good memories of this.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah,
I hope
playful arts.
yes,
You can
playful
you,
arts. Oh, nice. What month usually the events held?
It's usually in June. I think the last edition
June.
was in June. Unfortunately,
All
now
right.
I think they don't have reliable budgeting. So I think now the game
Mm.
I wouldn't say it's cancelled, but it's on at least it's on a break. I think if maybe they will get budget at some point in the future, they will do it again. But it was a very
Yeah. Yeah.
hybrid event. So, but yeah, definitely recommend it. At least yeah, I think you can find online definitely
Mm.
some documentation. So I would recommend checking it out.
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And the last question: what subject that you learn from school that you think is very useful in your career in the game industry? Hmm.
That's an easy one. I can answer you immediately, and that's English. That's yeah,
Ah.
was my favorite. I would say, even though I still speak English with an Italian accent, it was by far my favorite subject at school, and it really allowed me. I was always fascinated about like other languages and cultures, and I wanted
Hmm?
to spend some time living abroad, even when I was young, and of course, like being able to speak English decently allowed me to work abroad and yeah, and to live abroad. So it was very useful.
Wow.
So yeah, definitely this by.
That is very nice. Okay, so it will connect with our discussion for today. So this podcast we will talk about your journey in the video game industry, and most of our audience is new or maybe just want to start to jump in the industry, and maybe your story can inspire all of the audience regarding the career in the game development. So for starter. Uh, what I like to ask is like, do you remember when was the first time that you want to work in the game industry, and what is the trigger that make you want to work in the game industry?
So my path into games industry, and I would say the first time I thought, okay, this is very interesting. I think it would have been around 10 years ago, so around 2011. So I used to play. I mean, bit of background story. I used to play
Mm,
games as a kid, as a young kid. I was really into video games as a kid, and but then I would say from when I was like 13, 14 until my late 20s, I lost interest in games
mm,
because I discovered mostly the internet. I mean, I got World Wide Web and making websites, meeting people online, and I got into music, design, other type of things. And video games is something I didn't really follow for quite some time. For I would say for a good part of the late 90s and for the entire 2000s.
mm,
And then what happened in around 2011 is that I got my first, let's say, touchscreen device. it wasn't a smartphone, but it was a touchscreen device. I think an old iPod Touch. And
iPod
I want,
Touch.
yeah, the pre, you know, is kind of the iPhone without the
Mm,
phone, right?
yeah.
It was this type of device. I'm not sure they do anymore. And I got this device because I could see, you know, smartphones were starting to become a thing, and
Mm,
people were talking about apps and you know, touchscreen devices. And I felt, okay, you know, I might get the cheapest device of this type, so I can check a bit how the interface looks like, what
mm,
apps look like, you know, how this whole system works, you know. But it was more at the time. I think I was more interested. My idea was more, I will do some research into applications, apps in general, user
mm,
interface, the type of thing, user interaction. And then what happened, you know, I was checking a bit the App Store, and while I was
mm,
browsing apps, I saw, oh, there's some games as well, right? And then I downloaded some touchscreen iOS games,
mhm,
and I think I was just like searching. I was googling, okay, games, best games for iPod Touch, whatever, and that's when I discovered basically there was a thing called indie games,
okay.
and that's how I discovered, oh, there's a thing called indie games. And I was very familiar with the concept of indie music, you know, independent music,
Mm,
but I
mm,
never heard, to be honest, the term indie game or indie game developer, you know. And that fascinated me as somebody who was into independent music. I said, okay, that's, you know, you have independent musicians, you can also have independent game developers. That's interesting, you know, the idea of somebody doing their own things and not having games made by huge big studios or big corporations. And so that's basically how I got into indie games. And shortly after then, I attended the first edition of Amaze festival here in Berlin. I just
mm.
attended as a spectator, and I like the event so much that I really got inspired, and I decided, okay, I want to get involved somehow in games. And that's how I started collaborating with Amaze, and that's how I started also to organize my own events. At the beginning, I was really thinking, okay, what can I do? How can I contribute to the game scene, to the indie game scene somehow? You know, what can I bring to the table? And I wasn't particularly interested in making games myself. I've always been more of a facilitator, I would say.
Mm.
And so I thought, okay, one thing I could do, it's maybe organize a meetup, help organizing some events, some game jams, other things here in Berlin. And that's basically how my journey into games started. And then, yeah, I don't know if you want to consider doing events already working in the game industry or in game development, but that's the first thing I did. And then just by meeting, networking, and becoming friends with so many game developers here in Berlin, eventually I got the opportunity to collaborate with Maschinen-Mensch, which is what I'm doing now.
I see. Before, do you live in Berlin from the start, or you moved to Berlin at some point?
I've been living in Berlin for 13 years now, and yeah, all my journey into game development and the game scene has been here in Berlin. So yeah, when I got interested, I was already living in Berlin. So that's also why, even though I'm originally from Italy, I'm familiar a bit. I know a bit what's going on in Italy with the game scene, within the game scene, but
Mm?
I've never been active in the game scene while I was in Italy. So somehow I'm a bit detached. So I'm more involved, and I'm much more knowledge here of the scene in Germany and in Berlin than I have in Italy.
Did you move to Berlin because of like you saw the amaze and like I want to be part of it and I want to move, or you already in Berlin and you met this awesome event?
No, I moved to Berlin before games. So I
Ah, all
moved in
right.
2008, and I moved to Berlin initially. The first thing, I know it's not very romantic, but the first thing that caught my attention about Berlin was how cheap it was back then. I mean, for being a major Western city capital
Mm,
Western Europe, it was fairly cheap to live and offered a good quality of life.
mm,
And I like what was going on, and yeah, and it just ended up being very lucky timing, because even though, yeah, Berlin was cheap and interesting for a long time, it didn't provide many employment opportunities. And around the time I moved here in 2008, it's when the startup internet tech scene started growing
Mm.
with startups like such as SoundCloud primarily, and then other ones which followed. So this meant there were much more opportunities for employment for people with a kind of background similar to mine. So yeah.
I see. And then when you move to Berlin, and then you saw this event, and how do you start to jump into the industry? Did you contact with the organizer of a maze and you told them that, hey, I want to be part of it, I want to work for you, or how do you start it?
Yeah, I met so the festival director, the founder of Amaze, is called Thorsten S. Wiedemann, and at the very first edition of the festival, where I attended as a spectator, which was in 2012,
Mm,
yes, I believe. I just briefly, I just congratulated him. I went to introduce myself just to say,
mm,
hey, I really like the event,
mm,
and then maybe I said something like, yeah, I would like to help in the future. I'm not sure, but then basically we were in touch, I think, on online, on social media, on Twitter. And eventually, the following year, the festival grew a little bit, and he offered me to help. Actually, I think doing the very first year, I worked with Amaze in 2013. I did some social media, so I was just basically doing some, let's say, live tweeting, taking
mm.
pictures, and things like that. And was my first contact. So yeah, with the event. Yeah.
I see, I see. So is it like a full-time position or something that is part-time, or
You mean with Amaze?
yes, with the maze?
With the maze, well, I'm no longer involved right now. I did
Mm,
from 2013 to 2019, and it was always a part-time kind of thing.
mm,
Usually, I would say I would start getting. My role was. For the first edition of 2013, I did a bit of social media, as I mentioned, and after that, basically my role became program manager, which
mm,
meant I was um, curating the program part regarding the
mm,
talks and a bit the workshop. So basically, together with Thorsten, we would pick the speakers, the artists that we wanted to put on stage or to do workshops. We would maybe decide topics. Sometimes we discuss with the speakers. Sometimes we would suggest topics or put together panels. So all the day program, basically the program you'd have during the day on stage. And yeah, and basically usually this for me would throughout the entire year, whenever I met somebody in person or online, or I saw somebody was doing something interesting, I would take note. I would write down their name and some notes. And then a few months before the festival, we would start getting started with the planning. We really sit down and say, usually 6 months in advance, we would sit
mm.
down and say, okay, who do we want to invite this year? And we'll try to put together a bit a short list, and then send in the invitation, see who was available and interested in coming over to Berlin, and then put together the schedule. Who do we put first? Who do we put on stage? At what time? If we have multiple stages, who do we put at the same time? And stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, usually, what kind of topic that is being talked in a maze fest? Is it more like the technical side, business side, or maybe more generic?
It really varies, but overall, Amaze is really, I think the full name of Amaze right now, it's like Independent Games and Playful Media Festival.
Mm,
And it's been moving, it's always been interested in more in this, I would say more, you can say experimental side of game making, experimental, artistic, and non-commercial. There've been exceptions, it also changed over time as also the indie game scene changed and became a bit more commercialized. Also, the event itself it changed a little bit, the focus. And I would say in general, the topic would be more in terms of like inspiration and like where the inspiration for the games came from. It would rarely be like technical. It would be maybe like some stuff, maybe a little bit business, but very very little on the technical aspect. So yeah, it would more be um, to be, again, as I said, like it was a matter of like the inspiration for the game developers, but also that kind of talks which will be inspirational for the audience or provide ideas, new thoughts, reflections, and start a conversation and things like that.
I see. I see. And you you started in Amaze by being a spectator, and you meet the organizer. You build network with them, and then you get invited to be part of the program manager. And after that, what drive you to create your own events, like the one that you talk and play that you mentioned?
Talk and play, yes.
Yep.
It's been a few years now. It's been 8 years. Let me think chronologically. Chronologically, actually, I think I went. What happened is like I went to the first Amaze as a spectator in 2012. Then a few months later, I started. I organized the first two editions of Talk and Play,
Mhm.
the event, the meetup. I started at the very beginning on my own, and then I think after that I did the first edition of Amaze as social media, and but basically by the time I became the program manager for Amaze, I had at least 1 year and a half, 1 year of experience doing my own small events. So
Oh, all
I
right.
got some experience into contacting speakers, deciding the topic, helping like writing down the description of the talk, structuring a bit like a small event, putting one talk next to each other. So
Mm.
I had a little bit of experience, and I think that's what motivated like Thorsten to give me a possibility, an opportunity. That's why Thorsten then offered me this role, because he saw I was doing this on a small scale, and he offered me to do it on a bigger scale with the festival, with the maze. So I would say, um, for the years we were together, I would say like definitely Amaze and myself, we grew at the same time. It was
Mm.
like parallel growth. As the festival grew, also my experience and my knowledge and stuff grew as well. So it was a very nice. And I think like very positive experience for both of us, for the festival and for myself, for sure.
If a maze festival is more like a big event, like a whole week with a lot of things going on, and with this scale that like quite big. And how about talk and play? Is it something as big as a maze, or this is something like in a whole week or something like that, or is something more regular?
So Amaze is a regular meetup taking place every 2 months. So usually there's like six
Talk and
editions.
play or a
Yeah,
maze?
Talk and Play. Talk
Okay,
and Play.
okay.
Sorry, Talk and Play. Talk and Play. Sorry. It's taking place every couple of months,
Mm-hmm.
so usually six editions per year, and it takes place on one evening during the week, usually on a Tuesday evening. So
Oh.
starting doors opening at 7 p.m. and lasting around 4 hours, so until 11 p.m. or shortly before midnight. And it's quite compact, but usually basically the event would be split in two parts. It's called talk and play because these
Mm.
are the two parts, like the talk part, which is like the first half of the event, where there's like some short presentations on stage. It could be like maybe two, three very short talks, 5-10 minutes each, or it could be one longer presentation around half an hour, and followed by some game pitches. So people could pitch their game on stage very
Oh.
quickly, introduce their game, and then followed by a section where we had the announcements from the community. So everyone, I mean, usually they would have to give us a heads up in advance, but the stage would be open for like 5-10 minutes for anyone who wanted to come on stage and make an announcement. For example, hey, we want to promote this game jam organizing, or hey,
Mm.
there is this opportunity of collaborations, or hey, I'm looking for a 3D artist for my new prototype. If anyone wants to help me, it could be any type of announcement, really. And this format, I mean, we did 40 editions
Mm-hmm.
of this event every 2 months, pretty much, um, and yeah, over the years we really optimized the event. So also the way the first part of the event was structured, it was really refining, iterating on each edition. So how to have the different structure of the event. So it was quite compact but very effective. So the stage part, the talk part would be around 1 hour long, but there would be a lot going on, and then the second part of the evening would start, called like the play part, and
Mm-hmm.
this is where anyone could showcase um, uh, games or projects they were working on, and which means we would provide around 20 tables and chairs,
20?
around 20, yeah, tables
Oh,
around on the venue. That's how many we could fit, and basically people again that ideally to register in advance so we could
hmm,
prepare. But basically they would be people could just put their laptop or console. Some would bring a monitor. They would bring their own setup,
wow.
their hardware, and then like set up the game very quickly. And then basically for around for a couple of hours you could go from table to table, play games which were maybe
Oh,
could be like some in prototype stage, some maybe released, some soon to be released, some already came out. There would be like mostly digital games, mobile, desktop, or console previews, but there would also be card games. There would be sometimes maybe somebody made a book or a thing which was not, they were presenting something which was not like a playable thing,
mm,
but usually would be like games. And basically the audience could go around the venue, talk with people making the games, asking them questions, try the things out, and give feedback. And this was very, I think it worked. The format again, it was went through a lot of iterations, but it worked out really well because it was, I think, kind of like, how can I say, it was a win-win situation. It was very there was value for the attendees
hmm,
because you could play games, preview in development, or you could play games and meet the creators. But it would also be valuable for the people showcasing the games because they could either get early playtest feedback, they could do promote the game to the local people, they could
mm.
find collaborators, inspiration. It was really like a sort of it worked really well because all the parts, everybody got something out of it. And during the second part of the evening, of course, people didn't were not forced to play the games. They could
Mm,
also just
mm,
like watch, or they could just like, a lot of people just decided to network, to talk. During the second part of the evening, people would just like chat. If there was nice weather, they could go outside, but it would be just people having a drink and talking with everyone. And yeah, and this event, Talk and Play, for the last few years, for the last couple of years, attracted around 200 attendees. So the entry has always
wow.
been free entry. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but to my knowledge, is the biggest regular game dev meetup, regular one happening. It's the biggest of its kind. So I did a bit of
Mm,
research. No, there were like similar events. I think in Canada there was some stuff. Used to be in Montreal. I think in Vancouver there was
mm.
something. But when I looked up, I think no one was like the type of size. Like to do every 2 events, a free every 2 months, a free event, which for 200 attendees, it's quite something. And I think it has to do. We were able to do an event of this size and for free, largely because Berlin still allows this to happen. In Berlin, it's still possible
Mm.
somehow. It's getting more and more difficult. It's getting more and more expensive, but it's still possible to find nice venues in central locations, which can be rented for cheap. And in our case, we used to do the event at a venue which doesn't exist anymore, which is called the Game Science Center.
Mm.
And when we did the event there, we did it for free. So we had an agreement with the owners that
Ah.
basically we could use the space for free. So basically, they would keep the money from the bar. So anyone who bought a
Mm.
drink, the venue kept the money. But for us, we could use the space, we could use the technology they would provide, and it was perfect. So it was like it was a nice it was nice for them because it would bring people to the venue and they
Mm.
would find out about the space, and it was good for us because we could use a very nice space in central Berlin for free.
I see. You managed to make a great community, great events, attract like hundreds of attendee, attract like more than like around 20 studios to showcase their games, the speakers. My question is like, how did you start it from someone who nobody knows, you don't have any relation until you can get this many people to come to the event? How do you start it and grow the communities and event?
Mm, yeah, it's a good event. Let's see if I can say something useful for other people who might be
Mm,
listening. And I would say, first of all, the talk and play, when I started organizing at the very beginning on my own. Now, as it grew, I have a main co-organizer, Masha Camino,
Mm.
who's also my colleague here at the Maschinen-Mensch. She's a game designer, and for the last 3 years, she's been the co-organizer of the event with me. But at the very beginning, it was when it was like smaller scale. I was pretty much on my own, but I would say it wasn't the very first event ever organized, because I had a bit of experience from when I was still living in Italy. I had some experience organizing small music shows. So I
Ah.
knew kind of the basic of what it takes to, let's say, book a space, rent a space, and promote the event, bring people there. Of course, it's different when you're promoting a music show, then it's different than promoting a tech, game development meetup, but there are some similarities. At the end of the day, I think it's also about making the people feel comfortable. I mean, communicating the event well, let people understand what is happening, what is going to happen, and then I always try to make the event, I would say, entertaining, for participants. But I would say my background, so there was a bit of this event concert organization background, and also my background was also in project management. So when
Mm.
I started organizing talk and play on my own in 2013, I was working back then for some startups here, not in games, but from some tech startups as a project manager.
Oh, okay.
And I think I always say, organizing events is a bit like project management. I think it's
Mm.
project management on steroids. It's like project management with, like, you're working on an event. It's like an event is when you do an event, you have a very hard, solid deadline. If you're working on
Mm.
a game and we say, okay, we're releasing on the 1st of September,
Mm.
if there are delays, it's not nice. But if you're really in a bad place, you can still say, okay, sorry, but we need to postpone the release, right?
Yep. Yep.
And with an event, usually if you start promoting, if you say the event is happening on the 1st of September,
Mm.
technically you can cancel it, but usually it's going to happen on that event no matter what, and then you work in order to make it happen, right?
Mm.
And so basically for me, I approach really events also as a project management also task, so it meant, okay, I need to do an event. What do I need? Is like, okay, breaking down in different parts. So I need to do the promotion, so I need a logo, I need a website, um, I need a description, I need a form to sign up, I need a system, I need a map to how to reach the venue, and then what do I need? I need to contact the speakers, and if I want to advertise the speakers for the event 2 weeks in advance, I need to
Mm.
confirm them at least 3 weeks in advance. Then I will need to factor the time I need for them to provide me a biography.
Mm.
Again, I would really structuring. I think that's why I say, events at the end. I would say it's not rocket science, but events, it's a ton of very small tasks,
Mm. Mm.
and they all need to come together. So you need to have a bit of some organization. You need to be able to make everything work together. Especially if you want to do events of a certain level, of a certain quality, I think you need to have also some eye for detail, and yeah. And basically that's how I started. And then again, my project management background also contributed, because I was aware when I started doing talk and play, I was aware of
Mm.
how much time I had available, which was not much. I mean, I was working full time, this project management job. And so one of the very first early decisions, which then became, I think, also part of the success of talk and play,
Mm.
one of the first decisions was to decide not to do the event monthly, which is a very
Okay.
common decisions. I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it's a very common decisions first time organizers do. But I decided to do it every 2 months, because basically I had done a bit of research with other type of like other tech meetups happening in Berlin, and I saw there were a lot of them. For a lot of events, it was normal to say, well, yeah, once a month sounds right, like
Mm.
you do it every month, it's
Mm.
regular. But what I noticed is that a lot of events, after a few months, they quickly run out of like speakers or quality speakers, like,
Uh,
because finding people every month, it's quite tricky. At the beginning, when you start, everybody wants to give a talk, but then
mm.
it becomes more tricky and difficult to find interested and interesting people to put in front of a microphone. And so I realized, okay, if I do the event every couple of months, every 2 months, it's much more sustainable. It gives me more time to curate it, to promote it. And I was also like, and then if it proves successful, I can still increase the frequency. I believe it's always, I always recommend, first time organizers to start like less frequently, and then if it's successful, if you feel like, if you have team support, money, whatever, you can go more frequent. It's better to go from an event every 2 months happening once a month than the opposite. If you start an event and you do it very frequent, and then you change the frequency, you extend it, it confuses people. And I think it's very important also for an event to happen on a regular basis. So to be really constant and to happen no matter what on a regular basis. It can be 1, 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, once a year, but it's very important. And so basically I started doing the event on my own on a small scale, and then little by little it grew, and I tried with every edition. I tried to iterate, to try things out, to experiment with formats, what worked, what didn't work, to see also what was more valuable for the audience, but also try to listen a bit to my gut instinct, also which direction I want to bring it, and also which kind of projects I wanted to highlight, and so on. So yeah.
I see. Like you mentioned, like this is doing the thing that you did that you do to manage the event. There's a lot of things that you need to prepare from the speakers, managing the publication, and you need to build the community. And you can doing it even though 2 months. I think it's still quite a lot of work to do. And besides, you already had your full time job, so this is more like voluntarily you do for the community. Like in Indonesia, we have some communities, but their challenge always in the consistency, like how to keep doing it while they also have their full time job. So my question is, what motivates you to keep doing this every 2 months, even though this is like a lot of work? And I mean, like this is not your full time job.
Yeah, it's another another good question, I guess. But you also, I mean, you've also been organizing
Mm,
events, right? Yeah, I think so. Okay, that's why you're asking this question, because I guess you know where it's coming from.
mm,
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I had times, several times where this became a bit too much. There've been periods where, okay, I had deadlines at work, but still I had to pack everything quickly to go to the venue and prepare for the event. Whenever I could afford it, maybe I would take half day off or try to leave a bit early work. But sometimes it was just a busy week at work, and I couldn't take holidays just to organize the event, right? So there've been evenings when it's been very there've been days, times when it was a bit like stressful. Yeah, I tried to not to burn out, to take care of it of myself. But I think something I did a few times, was, for example, take a summer break. So usually, even though it was every 2 months, maybe a few years, for a few years we skipped the summer.
mm,
We did, so maybe we did 5 editions, so we wouldn't do it in June or July or August. We would skip a bit. Also because people prefer to be outdoors during
mm,
those months. And also, one thing that helped at some point, when I was maybe considering maybe taking a break or stopping the event, or something which helped was, on a personal level, it helped to maybe keep the event, try new things out, to change a bit the format of the event, try some different things, spicing it up somehow. And that kept it a bit interesting for me, so I didn't feel like I was always just doing the same thing over and over. And another thing that helped a lot for sure was then at some point deciding to get more people involved as co-organizers. So as I mentioned already, primarily Masha Camino, but also then other people with a team. We had a very fruitful collaboration with a school here, a private school, which is a
mm,
game design program. The school is called University of Applied Sciences Europe, EU.
mm.
And we had a very fruitful collaborations with them. Was very good friend with the head of the department, of the game department. And then they would also promote the event at the school, and we would have a lot of people, students, helping out at the event. So this was also like, and
Oh.
yeah, and as we got more people helping, and as I got older also, and I tried to become and learn to be a better organizer, I also learned how to delegate, more,
Mm.
and to give more tasks to other people. And of course, it's always I started the event. I felt it was my baby, but it was also like, I cannot, if I want the event to grow, I need to be able also to have other people contribute and do their own thing, and just
Mm.
to trust them. And I was very lucky to find a lot of people. Also, a lot of these students were really very talented and very skilled and smart people. And then I tried also to give them ownership, to make it feel like it wasn't, oh, it's my event and you're helping out, but it's the event Masha and myself are primarily organizing. But it wouldn't help. It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen at this scale without everyone working together. So.